Welcome to episode 29 of Convergence with myself, Karen Holton, here on People for People Radio. Find out how the personal is political as we explore the politics here on Earth, the exopolitics of our galaxy, and how these intersect with spiritual transformation through my unique perspective. Just to catch you up, in episode 28, I talked about a new service that I'm currently working on. I'm aware of many people who are now understanding that the construct, which is often called the matrix, literally exists, and that it does not serve their best interests. People are waking up by the millions, and since I know what this process is like, my guides have shown me a way to assist many of these newly awakened people. They will need the support of those of us who have already gone through this rather messy process. Long-haul truthers and light bearers have been awake to the construct, or the matrix, for a long time. When we first woke up, we thought we were alone, and we even wondered if we had gone insane. But now there are many reliable sources of support for newly awakened people. To catch up on my previous podcasts, please do check them out on the archives here on People for People Radio, www.peopleforpeople.ning.com, or on my Odyssey channel to find all of the episodes of Convergence. Since YouTube deleted Convergence episode 28, I am no longer referring my listeners to that platform. The link to my Odyssey channel is in the description below. And by the way, because YouTube came down so heavy on me after my last podcast, I'm going to be using words that mean similar to what I'm meaning and hoping that you'll be able to still understand my message here. I have to be a bit more careful if I want to post there, which unfortunately for now, I don't want to let down my subscribers, but anyway, due to circumstances, I also want to mention that due to circumstances beyond my control, this will be my last podcast on People for People Radio for a while. Gaz, the station owner, has kindly kept the door open for me to return in the future when my circumstances improve. I will, however, continue to produce podcasts for my YouTube and Odyssey channels, although they will be much more random, and none of them will be live streamed. And I'm very sorry to have to say that, but I've really enjoyed my time here on People for People Radio, and I strongly suggest you visit the website, and if you can, leave a donation to help fund this amazing radio station, which is one of the last few places where we can speak freely and not worry about censorship. So please do check out People for People Radio, and don't just look at the archives of my shows, check out some of the other shows too. It's just a fantastic platform and I highly recommend it. So today in episode 29, I'd like to share with you a brief look at the past 100 years of government policy and oversight and how this directly affects our quality of life, our health, and general well-being today. In Canada, the government and other regulatory bodies have cooperated with big business and the advertising and media agencies for many years to fulfill their depopulation agenda. The eugenics movement, although hidden from most of us, has been implemented by nearly every government on this planet for over the past century and is nothing new. In fact, information about the eugenics movement was taught to me in nearly every university course that I took in order to earn my degree. So why are most people unaware of these policies? In short, plausible deniability. In order to achieve their evil agenda, toxins have been allowed to infiltrate our air, water, and food supplies. While rules and regulations to protect us do not in fact work. The regulatory bodies do exist, but they are paid off to not do their job effectively. Thus, they do not protect us from harm. So let's look at the past century and the information we now know to be true. Do some research. There are many sources of information to prove my point. We are being used. Our physical bodies are being used as toxic dump sites, and our bodies do their best to filter out these toxic substances. But this is a losing battle as we lose our health and our vitality. In fact, the very medical systems that we go to for assistance are indeed part of the military-industrial complex, as is the media, the shadow government, and the few big businesses that own all of the brand name products. The slow takeover has been going on for years and years, leading up to the current state of affairs. Today, let's look at some examples of how our food, water, personal care and cleaning products, internal and external environments, and the things we spend time with are mostly toxic and cause illness and discomfort. Collectively, we pay billions of dollars, mostly to the medical industry, as we seek relief, only to be given more toxic substances to treat the symptoms. We are all being poisoned on a mass scale. So let's start by taking a look at food, what we consider to be food. Real food is labeled, but it does not have a list of ingredients. So for instance, if you're buying cucumbers and squash, they are labeled cucumbers and squash, but they don't have a list of ingredients because they are whole foods. Real food is what our great grandparents ate back in the 1800s and before. So although some of them didn't have access to a broad range or selection of available foods, mostly they had what they grew in their own gardens, they still had real food because all the modern chemical additives had not been invented yet. And so for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, our bodies learned to adapt to real food. So our bodies have adapted to digest unadulterated real foods in order to maintain good health. In the past, though, abundant supplies of healthy whole foods were reserved for the ruling classes, and they knew that people were easier to subjugate when they suffer from malnutrition. So although, our ancestors were eating real foods, there was often situations where the ruling class would come and take all the good food and leave the population with moldy potatoes. We saw that in Ireland, and we're seeing that even today in North Korea. But people are not given enough to eat, and they're much easier to subdue and to manipulate when they're not receiving the nutrition they need for healthy bodies and healthy minds. So getting back to the last 100 years, in the early 1900s, a man named Kellogg started to pass processed breakfast cereal off as health food. The advertising agencies began to shape the minds of the consumers, and soon everybody had a box of dry, lifeless cereal on their morning table. And then there's food additives and preservatives, which were created to enable a long shelf life. And this was done to maximize profits. So everything with food additives and preservatives has been engineered to have a shelf life of 25 years or longer. And back in the day, I was born in the 1950s, and so we saw all these new products that we were told were healthier and more convenient. And so we started to put our trust and our faith into what we were being told by advertising and by the media at the time. So our mothers started feeding us powder skim milk, which is horrible stuff and has very little positive nutrition for the body. We were given pre-sweetened Kool-Aid, cold and instant cereals, Tang. Now, getting back to the pre-sweetened Kool-Aids, what they did is in order to produce cheaper and to be able to take up less space, they started using chemicals. So this was way before aspartame. This is back when they came out with the very first artificial sweeteners, and they tasted gross, but they covered them up with other flavorings and they passed it off as Kool-Aid. So our mothers were giving us Kool-Aid with our lunches, thinking that this was a pretty good thing because it didn't have sugar in it. But the reason it didn't have sugar was because they wanted the packaging to be much smaller, because they needed very small doses of these artificial chemicals to sweeten the product. But these were extremely toxic, and they caused a great deal of what we know as cancer today. Then the cold and instant cereals, they're refined beyond being refined. In fact, the reason they can have a 25-year-old shelf life is because nothing can live off of them, including actually people. And then they came out with Tang. Tang was the breakfast drink that replaced orange juice. And they said even the astronauts took Tang into space so they could be healthy and they could have the convenience in the zero gravity atmosphere of space. So everybody wanted to be like the astronauts. And so, of course, the mothers were giving us Tang. And then they tried to tell us that butter was harmful to us, and that fats, healthy fats, were not good for us. And they replaced all that with margarine. And margarine is absolutely toxic. As far as I know, it's been banned in the United States, as are all trans fats. But in Canada, they're still selling margarine. Then there was canned soups. Canned soups had a lot of sugar in them, and everything was so over processed. It was lifeless, and it may have had a few vitamins in it, but really not anything that we would need to support growing bodies. And many more toxic foods were added to our everyday diets as we fell for the advertising ploys. Now, things have gone from bad to worse. Now, here we are, well, 65 years plus later, and almost everything you can get from the store includes chemicals and things that are not good for you, and dead, lifeless things that we think are food. The addition of man-made chemicals and edible petroleum products like artificial sweeteners, non-dairy creamers, and food derivatives like high fructose corn syrup are all being used and have infiltrated our food supply. And they create what we call food-like substances. They have a long shelf life and they're highly addictive. Now, rats, mice, and bugs will not attempt to eat these products because they're so toxic. They know they can't live off of it. If they take that back to the pack, everyone's going to die of malnutrition. They don't eat it. That's why it can have such a long shelf life, because there's no way the rats, the mice, the bugs are going to eat it. And so it sits on the shelf pest-free. And these products have chemicals that also cause them to be resistant to mold and other fungi. And the reason that causes the resistance to those pathogens, molds and fungi are pathogens, is because they're toxic. So even the mold can't live off of it. And so it has a 25-year lifespan. Chemicals like aspartame, MSG, and refined corn fructose are three of the many ingredients within food-like substances which are highly addictive. They contain excitotoxins, which energize the brain while killing off mass amounts of brain tissue. So when people drink a bottle of Diet Coke, or they're having one of these energy booster, Red Bull or whatever, they feel, wow, an alertness and a sudden boost of energy, and they think that this is a good product. But what they don't know, because you can't feel it, is that mass amounts of your brain tissue are being destroyed every time you eat it. Then there are the smear campaigns for organic. So organic is being limited in a number of ways. For one thing, like my mother used to say, oh, save your money, don't buy organic, just peel it and it'll be fine. But they don't realize that organic means that it's not GMO. Organic means that it was grown in a sustainable environment. And it also means that the food has not been produced with any chemical additives, herbicides, pesticides, and things like that. But there's been a huge campaign against organic. Of course, it is more expensive because it's grown the way food should be grown, and it's not mass produced in farm factories or in warehouse factories. And so there's been a big smear campaign. A lot of people don't even understand what organic means or what the difference might be. And then now there's another problem. They're importing products that are labeled organic that are coming from countries like China, where there is nobody inspecting or proving that these products are actually organic. And then another problem is the way they have imports set up. When somebody, a truck driver I used to know, he used to import, or he used to bring with him, transport, I should say, organic fruits and vegetables from the States to Canada. And when he got to the border, he just took in a piece of paper that the customs officer looked at and then handed him a roll of stickers for the product. Nobody was even spot checking these fruits and vegetables to make sure that they were indeed organic. So it's become a huge, huge challenge to find food that's unadulterated, food that our bodies can recognize and know what to do with to help us to improve and maintain our health. So next I want to consider GMO vegetables. Almost everything that's processed includes GMO vegetables. Now when GMO it was introduced to our food supply, the regulators decided there was no need to mention that it was GMO. So although if you go for organic, there's a higher likelihood that it's not GMO, if it doesn't say that it's GMO, it probably is if it's not organic. And it's not just what we're eating. So we eat the fruits and vegetables that are GMO. Our bodies don't know what to do with them. We start to produce fat because we need to isolate the elements away from the central system of our bodies to prevent us from being poisoned and in an effort to protect us. So a lot of processed foods, even if they're labeled diet, even if they're labeled gluten-free and sugar-free, they're still going to cause a person to put on weight because they're labeled as obesogens. They cause the body to gain weight, to isolate the toxic elements so that we can in some way try to maintain our health. And then another thing is you look at the beasts that we eat, you know, whether it's chickens, whether it's beef, whether it's pork, what are they feeding those animals? Because if they have fed those animals GMO foods, those animals are now GMO. They do not have the components to make their meat healthy for us. And so that's another really big problem. Then there's glyphosate, which is commonly known as Roundup, and it's a deadly poison, and it permeates the grains we eat, all of the grains that we eat. So to make things even worse, if we're buying dead, lifeless flakes of wheat or corn as a breakfast cereal, check out online, do research and find out how much glyphosate, also known as Roundup, is actually embedded right into the grains that they're using to produce the cereals. Then there's also fake and false labeling to trick us. So an example of that is I read labels all the time when I'm going to the store. Sometimes sugar is listed in the ingredients list, yet the product nutritional value claim that it has 0 carbs. You cannot have sugar in a product and have it zero carbs. That's not possible because sugar is pure carbohydrate. The other thing is in Canada, the list of order of ingredients tells you how much volume of the finished product has that sugar in it. So for instance, if it has as the third listed ingredients out of 10 sugar, you know it's got a lot of sugar in it. But then it's also got all these other names of sugar derivatives that are also in the product. And yet many of these products, in order to sell them to you, claim that they have zero carbs. That's not possible. And so what's happened is now the labeling is fake and false, and we can't even believe that. Packaging and labeling that lie to you, they how do they do this? By misusing words and phrases so that you think you're buying natural, you think you're buying pure, and you think you're buying healthy products. But when you do research, you find out that they've actually given new meanings to those words, and they've done so through the legal system so that they're allowed to use them even though they don't mean what we think they mean. So I just have one thing to say. Wake up! Everything within the construct, also known as the matrix, also known as the mainstream, is a lie. And we must make the effort to see this for ourselves. It's problem, reaction, solution. These products create obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, mental instability, and most other diseases, along with so much suffering. I'm also going to throw in here just a bit about pharmaceuticals. I'll address them down a little bit later in this presentation, but because we eat them mostly, pharmaceuticals that we are told will help us, they only manage the symptoms and they cause many more side effects. So more disease because they are toxic and create more inflammation. So what that means is when we take a pill for a headache or a cold remedy, or even something that we think we have to take in order for us to survive, we're actually bringing more inflammation to the body because these are chemicals that are man-made and the body doesn't really know what to do with them. Yeah, they might manage a symptom, but they're not going to go anywhere near helping you to find out what's causing those symptoms so that you can actually make a permanent change and improve your overall health and not need the toxic pharmaceuticals anymore. Today, chemical-laden convenience foods have replaced home-cooked meals, which feature real food. So if you want to start, a good step in the right direction is just start making your own food. Make it from scratch. Learn how to cook. Take some cooking lessons if you have to. Check out videos on how to cook with real food. And you will be taking a huge step in the right direction. And become aware that nanoparticulates from fertilizers are also in our foods. Do some research on nanoparticulates. Our bodies don't know what to do with them because they're too small. Our bodies and our health are run, although they're made up of atoms and molecules, our body systems are built to run on a cellular level. And in the cellular level, we access our DNA, we produce the energy, we do all the things that we need to do to be healthy. But nano is much smaller. Nano is small like the atomic and the molecular level, and our bodies can't deal with them on a cellular level. So that's something else for you to research and to take a look at. So all of this is just under the heading of let's consider what we're eating, what we think is food. And if you're not convinced, by at least some of this, that our health is deteriorating because the food supply has been contaminated, you need to wake up and realize that. So this is part of the depopulation agenda that's been going on for at least 100 years. Before that, they just starved people to death. But anyway, They found out they could make more money by producing all this stuff than by starving us to death. So now let's take a look at our water supply. The standard plumbing in most cities and towns renders our water impotent. Natural water, as it flows from springs and mountaintops, has a revitalizing effect on the body, and it provides us with much needed minerals. And this has to do with even the the spin of the electrons. Water is very able to be influenced. Do some research on Dr. Emoto about the experiments he did with water, and consider not getting yourself off the city water and at least getting onto some spring water. And I know they sell spring water in quite a few places, but if you can, do this. Now I know that we're all limited, especially those of us that live in the cities. And if you work full time and your partner works full time, oh my goodness, where are you going to get the energy for all this? I understand. But this is going to make a huge impact on your life. So let's just consider as much as you can. So another thing about water that most people don't know is there's a great concern about the levels of pharmaceuticals and illicit designer drugs that are showing up in our water supply. These are not addressed or filtered out. Some people have the habit of flushing their old prescriptions down the toilet, but all of these chemicals are inadvertently resupplied back into our so-called freshwater system. Also, every drug we take becomes contained within the pee and the poop we flush every day. These chemicals include steroids, hormones, cocaine, antidepressants, illicit designer drugs, and other prescription drugs. Since we consume the water and then excrete it out again, our city water is becoming even more toxic over time. Even the fish that we eat contain heavy loads of prescription and illicit drugs. Many coastal cities like Victoria, BC, with a population of over 400,000 people, pump and pipe their raw sewage directly into the ocean. And this is how it contaminates the fish. And then there's chlorine and fluoride and other chemicals. People who drink this water, and I'm talking about the city water, are dummied down and they're unable to think clearly. They can't think critically or rationally, so they don't take full responsibility for their lives. There seems to be a correlation between chemical additives in the water supply and higher levels of chemical addiction. Then there's also industrial waste, which seeps into the water supplies. Look up Flint, Michigan, and many other court cases regarding polluted water from big industry. I live in Alberta, and it's well known that all the major cities, Edmonton, Calgary, and Red Deer, the water system, because we don't get as much rain here, the aquifers and the systems within the earth in Alberta have been heavily polluted from fracking, from oil refineries, and from other heavy industries. And also here in Alberta, Canada, there is a heavy use of pesticides and herbicides on the farmland. So what isn't oil and gas in Alberta is mostly farmland. And so they spray their crops with their herbicides and their pesticides, and this is carried into the this is carried into the cities and towns simply by air current. It blows all over the place and it ends up in our air, and we're breathing it in on a constant, consistent basis, especially during the growing season. Then there are the chemicals that are sprayed into our skies, which fall onto all of us, including the feed sources for our livestock. So there is just a few things that have to do with water that some people, you might realize some of these points, but maybe didn't realize the other ones. So it's really important for you to have sources of clean water. And by the way, if the government cared about its citizens, then according to the First Nations people, there are over 40 Indian reserves in Canada that do not have drinkable water. They've either never had drinkable water or their water sources got contaminated by industry. And our government is doing nothing to our Indigenous people to help them to have clean water. So that's something else to think about. How concerned are they really for our health? I would say not at all, which casts an interesting perspective on everything we see going on right now. So now let's look at several sources of man-made chemicals that directly affect our health. Natural organic fabrics have been replaced with synthetics, which are made from petroleum oils. These break down over time, especially your underwear, and that's a warm, sweaty environment. That's a great place for your synthetic undies to start breaking down, or even your sweat clothes, a lot of your exercise gear, everything you wear outside that comes in contact with sunlight, all of that is breaking down over time and releasing toxic elements and gases. They also interfere with your subtle energy systems within the body. Then there's cleaning products and over sanitization. I really recommend you check out my website and look up the Quantum Health Transformation Program. Step 6 is specifically about detoxification. And I'll show you on the video in step 6, actually there's 3 videos, how cleaning products and over sanitation are working against us. And then there's personal care products. Again, watch Quantum Health Transformation Step 6 to learn more. Most of our personal care products and our cleaning products are extremely toxic to every living thing. They don't just kill germs, they kill everything. And so it's really important that you educate yourself about what you're using on your body and to clean your home. Chemicals in our environment show up in places where you don't think of that, like for instance carpets. Our carpets, our paint, press board that our cheaper furniture's made out of, all of those things outgas chemicals into our internal home environment. And then there's industrial emissions that we consider to be, oh, that's just pollution. That is heavy duty chemical poisoning in our air. Now, most of the cheap consumable products which are imported from China are also toxic. Give them a good smell. Everything from plastics to disposable plates smell like chemicals. Don't buy them. I recommend smelling everything. I have a really sharp sense of smell, so for me, I can tell right away if there's chemicals on my potatoes, if there's chemicals on my clothes, if there's chemicals on my disposable plates. I mean, there's even chemicals in my sticky notes. We're surrounded by chemicals. Once you wake up to it and you become aware, just stop one by one, stop buying them. And the biggest problem, or not biggest problem, but a huge problem that I'm seeing is false labeling as safe for children and non-toxic. So in Canada, we have a lot of dollar stores where you can get things super cheap. They're all imported from China. And many of these products are labeled safe for children and non-toxic. But when you do the research, you find out, no, they're not safe. In fact, a lot of the chemicals that they use to make baby bottles and soothers and things that are having direct contact with your baby or your child, with their skin, with their digestive system, they're highly toxic. And all kinds of things like crayons and coloring materials and stuff for doing body art and put in the bathtub to play with and make bubbles, all of that stuff is extremely, extremely toxic. But it's labeled as safe, so people are buying it and using it with their kids. It's cheap, gives the kids a good time, but guess what? Later on, they have health problems because of it. Pharmaceuticals and surgery have replaced preventative medicine, and many of the ailments that we seek to remedy are actually caused by our toxic lifestyles and standard medical protocols. Use your common sense. The opiate crisis took over 500,000 lives in the US alone. Now, the opiates are made by the same companies that are making the evil poke, which I hope you know what that means. Can you trust them? If they cared about your health and safety, if the politicians, if the policymakers cared about your health and safety, then 500,000 lives would not have been lost due to oxycodone. Just oxycodone, never mind all the other pharmaceuticals. And as I mentioned, if they cared about our health, why has this issue not been addressed? And why are the drug companies not being held accountable? Well, even worse than that, they are now given these legal exemptions so that we can't sue them anymore. So they cause harm, and they don't want to lose any of their profits to court cases for settling in or outside of court. And so now instead, they're just devising laws and rules so that we can't touch them. How disgusting is that? And even our mental health practitioners are guilty of gaslighting and lack of genuine support, especially if we are in the waking up process. A mental health practitioner who has not experienced the awakening cannot speak to support in this area. And misdiagnosis is very common. They are treating the symptom and not the underlying causes of that symptom. They are completely enmeshed within the mainstream system, and many are actually agents of the system as they try to reorient you back within the construct. Many of the common mental health issues we see today are a direct result of a contaminated diet and water supply. So I'm going to ask you, what good is therapy, and what good is adding more pharmaceuticals to the mix when the initial problem comes because our bodies don't know what to do with all the fake and addictive food that we're consuming or a contaminated water supply? How much sense does that make? Does this sound far-fetched to you? Well, then do some research for yourself. Look up what you can. I would suggest using another search engine besides Google, DuckDuckGo, or any of the other ones, which are not as censored, and you'll be amazed by what you find. Also, most religions are control systems which rely on dogma rather than spiritual enlightenment. And for those of us who are waking up today, we find going to church is much like asking Superman to take the bus. We are not made to operate without our higher spiritual self. Indeed, the state of sovereignty includes a connection to our higher self. We are not alone. We are never left alone. We have an internal guidance system, we have an internal guidance system, but many of you, sorry, I can't even read my own notes. Oh my goodness. But many of you are seriously out of touch with it. So those of us who are seriously out of touch with our internal guidance system aren't using it. The construct requires conformity, which serves to sever our connection to source. Once we wake up, we're free to reestablish this connection. This is our true selves. We are connected. Think about the movie called The Golden Compass. We all have an internal guidance system that works like a golden compass. Our internal guidance system must be reestablished as we cease to put our faith in the faulty systems that have caused so much harm. So let's take another look at what's going on today. What happens when someone has already been double poked and then finds out the truth and they start waking up? Instead of succumbing to the fear, they can be prepared for the unexpected. by implementing some of the many recommendations and protocols that have been prepared by people with training and experience. But they can also work within their own bodies to find some relief and find the unimaginable wisdom that's found within. I call this your inner guru. We all have one. And I help people to reconnect with this potent source of wisdom and self-healing. When you're ready, I am here to offer you some support. In the meantime, do some research on the following. Seek out expert alternative advice on detoxification. Many are recommending oral chelation, which is usually ingesting large amounts of specific vitamins and nutraceuticals, and also various edible clays that draw out and cleanse, draw out of the body toxins and removes them safely. Many people are recommending tincture of cilantro and taking detoxifying baths with Epsom salts, baking soda, etc. This is what I do to minimize the risk and to maintain my health while I was in constant contact with people who have taken the evil poke. Now, this is not health advice. This is just what I did, and it's not meant to tell you what to do. It is meant to give you some suggestions to stimulate your own self-knowing and to see what resonates with you. So I took Schizandra berry tincture. It works the very same way as pine needle tea. I took C60, about a tablespoon a day of this powerful antioxidant. I took vitamin C, about 3,000 milligrams per day. I took zinc, 2 or 3 tablets a day. I took vitamin D, at least 5,000 international units a day. I took CBD in MCT oil several times a day. MCT oil is medium chain triglycerides, very easy to digest, and the CBD oil is very good at creating a homeostasis within the body. And I also focused on how much I loved the people that I came in contact with. Remember that for at least the last century, the medical industry has been part of the military-industrial complex. It does not address issues of food, toxicity, EMFs, lifestyle, man-made chemicals, etc. We are seen as soulless machines and are treated as such. This is why I have not taken any pharmaceutical medications, whether prescribed or over the counter, for many years. I use food as medicine because my body knows what to do with nutraceuticals. I also recommend that you do research. Do as much research as you can about the evil poke. So far, I have learned that there are over 40 mechanisms of harm from the evil poke, and here are just a few. Graphene oxide. These are carbon strands that are a single atom thick, and it reacts with hydrogen to create magnetism. There are spike proteins which cause blood clots, ongoing destruction of tissues, lung injury, neurological disorders, and much more. They are believed to cause infertility because several months after accepting the evil poke, the spike proteins collect in the ovaries and the bone marrow. Several of the ingredients in the evil poke are known to cause cancers. And of course, we also know that they cause chemical poisoning. An example is polyethylene glycol, or PEG. So PEGs are mostly used in spray oven cleaners and in hair and skin products because they dissolve oil and grease. But when they're injected into the body, and our body is made up of an oil-based system mixed with a water-based system, I can't even imagine what happens when they're within the body. Then we also know that they are causing autoimmune disease, and they have the ability to produce EMFs, which are electromagnetic frequencies, so that they can communicate these elements that produce the EMFs, is so that they can communicate via your cell phone to report health data back to the controllers. And if you want to really learn a lot about EMFs and how they affect the body, check out my podcasts about alien implants. I know everybody thinks it's a big joke, alien implants, but no, they're very real. This is very provable, and I've done several podcasts that give you quite an in-depth look into what they are, how they got there, and what we could do about it. Then I also recommend that you tell other people about the challenges and the side effects you face because you took the evil poke. Join the top doctors, scientists, and lawyers who are some of the whistleblowers who proclaim evil pokes are not safe. Evil poke harm is very common. Those who refuse the evil poke do not harbor diseases because they have healthy immune systems. Do not feel discouraged. In some ways, we are all in the same boat because we've all been deceived. Whether people have received the evil poke or not, we are all facing toxification from heavy metals, EMFs, pharmaceuticals, 5G, and contaminants in our food and water. Do more research to find evidence of the many other tools for profit, which are also our tools of extermination. If the government cared about our health, they would have created laws and policies to ensure that we receive clean water and organic heirloom foods during the past century. Where is their advice about eating properly and about the benefits of getting enough fresh air and exercise? It is easy to see that the government abuse is very great. And there is some good news. The newly awakened can make good use of some powerful but often overlooked technologies. Included in these are practicing love. It's the most powerful force in the universe. Also, consider becoming the change that you wish to see in the world. When we shift, the world shifts with us. Learn about epigenetics. We can change our genetics. Although mRNA alters our genetics, well, let's do all that we can to change them back. And I believe that we can actually do this. If by using frequencies, scientists can turn a frog into a salamander, then we can use frequencies to reestablish our authentic DNA. So don't give up. Check out the many, many modalities within energy healing: body tapping, color therapy, the use of crystals and orgone generators, aromatherapy, yoga, therapeutic baths, earthing and grounding, Reiki, reflexology, massage, the list goes on. And all energy healing follows a harm none mandate, so you can trust that it will not exacerbate your condition. Many of these healing arts can be done by yourself. Learn to meditate, take more therapeutic baths, try self-hypnosis and body tapping, crystal and orgone healing, and of course, learn to master your thoughts. Once reprogrammed by yourself, you can get your thoughts to work for you, and they will no longer be holding you back. So, in a nutshell, globally, we need a new system of medicine. One that integrates the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual elements of life. We must realize that we are all connected. What affects the part also affects the whole. We need a system that removes toxic waste so the body can heal itself. Since all wisdom comes from within, we don't need the experts, and they know it. I am a solutions-oriented therapist, and if you have taken the evil poke, there is no way to reverse it within the medical industry or any other therapy within the construct. Do not let yourself become paralyzed by fear and anxiety. Celebrate that you are waking up and embrace the challenge. Although I am not recommending a cure, I am recommending that you do your utmost to make the best use of your body, mind, feelings, and spirit, so you can have the best chance to heal and make the most out of this adventure that awaits you outside of the construct. So here's a few more recommendations. I'm going to have to speed up here, I'm running out of time. Make use of a clean lifestyle supported by real food, which contains nutrients and nutraceuticals. And check out my free online course called Quantum Health Transformation. Meditate. Find your true self and your own inner guru by going within. Use body movement. This will enhance your flexibility and keep your heart and circulatory system strong. Make sure you're living in a loving environment. Keep your social life healthy. Distance yourself from anything and anyone who brings you down. Follow your passions. Stay engaged with that which makes you feel good. Make use of the positive influences of nature and music. All these things raise your resonant frequency, which is reflected within our light bodies, our cells, our heart, and our brain. This energy is inspiring, creative, and healing. I believe that we can find a way to actually deactivate and take control of any artificial chemicals or technology that we've been subjected to. We are all affected one way or another, so let's take control of our consumption. There has never been a better time to check out the Quantum Health Transformation Program, which, as I mentioned, is my free online lifestyle course. It is available from my website and social media platforms. Check it out, along with the other free and inspiring information found within my various podcasts. I am available for support while you take this free course and while you learn to trust and love yourself. If you would like to help support my work, please purchase some of my beautiful Zen Dome Organites. I'm unable to offer new designs at this time, but visit my website, shop, to view my extensive selection while supplies last. And if you want to help create the change that you wish to see in the world, take exquisite care of the temple body. Raise your vibrational frequency and learn from the Quantum Health Transformation Program. Thank you for joining us. And as we have been going live, 1 p.m. Mountain Time every Tuesday here on People for People Radio, check out all of the episodes of Convergence in the archives found at www.peopleforpeople.ning.com. And feel free to hit that donation button to help support this radio station. A special thank you to Gaz and Vanessa for hosting me and moderating for me here on People for People Radio. And much love and light to you, the viewers. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If you would like to enjoy more of my content, just check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton, healthcoach.com, where you will find an abundance of free resources to assist with energetic ascension into physical, mental, and spiritual paradise. There you will find the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation, my free, no strings attached, comprehensive online lifestyle course. There has never been a better time to check it out. You will also find my serial podcasts, interviews with awakened masters. Starting this Thursday, I'll be hosting guests who will share their waking up experiences and how they learn to cope outside of the construct. And many other inspiring educational videos, including my Fringe View podcasts. Science fiction becomes science fact as you learn about my real life, paranormal, and extraterrestrial experiences. And again, if you would like to support my work, please check out my online shop. You will find my Zen Dome's Organite. It's my unique brand of orgone generators. They're ethically sourced, they're handmade, and they're double charged for maximum effect. I have some comfort crystals. They are a limited collection of energetically infused semi-precious stones. I have lifestyle services, workshops, assessments, and one-on-one support and coaching. And of course, I have PDF downloads, which are printable, shareable copies of my lessons. So my website again is www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. You can email me at forbiddentransformation@gmail.com. And then you may wish to check out my channels for future content, www.youtube.com/C/Karen Holton TV, and of course Odyssey, www.odyssey.com/@Karen Holton TV. Well, that's it, and thank you again, and much love to all of you.